Now, moving on, a motion calling for Labour to reverse its cuts to the winter fuel allowance, as we've been discussing, has been backed by party conference members in a humiliating blow to Sir Keir Starmer.
Save the winter fuel! Save the winter fuel! Save the winter fuel!
And of course, while there's nothing binding about that vote, it does put further pressure on Labour over its decision to take away the benefit from 10 million British pensioners. And the motion was put forward by the Unite Union, and their General Secretary, Sharon Graham, told GB News the government is embarking on austerity Mark II.
Well, look, I think this vote should have happened on Tuesday. I mean, the vote was down under the economy debate on Tuesday, and I think it is disrespectful to the issue that we weren't hearing that vote earlier on under the economy debate. Look, the reality here is that they're going to have to reverse this allowance in terms of putting it back into the pockets of pensioners, and we're asking them to do that. I disagree with what the Prime Minister is saying on this. I'm really glad we've got a Labour government. I think Britain is better off with a Labour government, but on this issue, it is a huge misstep, and he needs to change what he has done. And I think the country out there, it's not really what happens in this hall that's important, it's what's happening there in the real world. They are furious about it.
Well, Unite or furious, and let's go live now to the spokesperson for Fuel Poverty Action, Jonathan Bean. Jonathan, welcome to the show. So we can see that the unions are furious. Are you furious about the fact that even though the unions stood up to the Labour Party and voted this motion down, it's not binding, this will still be the law of the land? 10 million pensioners will not be getting their winter fuel allowance this winter. What's your thoughts?
Well, yes. I mean, the British public are furious, and millions of pensioners actually terrified going into this winter. It's very obvious to everyone that Rachel Reeves made a terrible mistake. And it's very clear also that they intend to kind of look tough and stick with this mistake and try and pretend there's not an issue, regardless of the impact on public confidence in terms of the number of deaths and the impact this is going to have on the NHS.
Do you find it astonishing still, all these weeks on, as many of us do, Jonathan Bean, that despite the fact the Labour Party were briefing themselves in 2017 that we could see 4,000 deaths if the Conservative government of the time, under Theresa May, got rid of the winter fuel allowance, they pressed on and did it anyway? And the saving of £1.4 billion today, we find there could be 50 billion quid they found down the back of the sofa at Downing Street. Do you think there's an element here of tin-eared Keir Starmer? He hasn't listened to pensioners. He's pressed on with this, despite the fact it seems to me, in my opinion, to be one of the most unpopular things the Prime Minister has done in living memory.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously not listening to the British public. He's not listening to charities. He's not listening to fuel poverty experts. He's now not listening to his own members. So really, we're now terrified. It's very clear they're not going to change. We're looking at 2 million low-income pensioners being potentially without heating this winter, and a huge impact on the NHS. We've got fuel prices going up. They're going to be 65% above what they were in 2020. So it's a really serious situation. Standing charges are double what they were, and this lifeline has been taken away. And pensioners are the last people you want to be switching off their heating in winter. That's just going to have huge impacts on the NHS.
And Jonathan, you're obviously hearing from many, many pensioners out there who have grave concerns. Do you think they'll forget this in a hurry? Do you think this is something that will live with them for a long time? Politicians, I think people have 5-minute memories. Oh, they won't care. In a few months' time, they'll have moved on. We'll be talking about something different. But if this is a matter, as you say, Jonathan Bean, of life and death, do you think pensioners might remember this when they head to the polling booths next time?
Well, I would actually be more worried whether people are going to survive this. I mean, we are going to lose thousands of pensioners as a result of this decision. And many will end up getting sick. And pensioners may not always vote for Labour, but they have families, and their families are also extremely worried. We need an energy system where people can afford to put their heating on and stay safe and don't end up getting sick and don't end up dying, which is why we've proposed something called Energy for All, which would guarantee everyone the essential energy to stay warm. And we're taking this to number 10 next week, and we really hope that Keir Starmer will start listening and taking the action to save lives and save the NHS.
And Jonathan Bean, when you're down in Downing Street, please come and see us here at GB News. We're just around the corner. We'd love to do all we can to support you. And in the meantime, if people want to support Fuel Poverty Action, what do they do? How can they get in touch?
Well, yeah, go onto our website. We have the petition. We have 660,000 people that have signed the proposal for Energy for All. We have many people also campaigning against standing charges. So, yeah, please go on our website, Energy for All. And also Fuel Poverty Action. We have two websites, and please, get involved in actions both aimed at the government and also Ofgem, who are currently refusing to get rid of standing charges. So there's lots of battles still to happen this winter. We just hope that people will start listening and some positive change can happen.
Well, Jonathan Bean at Fuel Poverty Action, you're doing God's work. Please keep going and please come and see us when you're down in London. Thank you very, very much for joining us today on GB News. I really do appreciate your time. Thank you. France's new Interior Minister has pledged to expel illegal immigrants who have, quotes, broken into the country, amid moves aimed at toughening law and order. It's an astonishing development, and joining me now to discuss this is the journalist and broadcaster from Paris, Peter Allen, joining us live on GB News. Peter, welcome to the show. Always a delight. This is an astonishing development. France has gone full Farage. In fact, they've gone one further, and this is President Macron's new Interior Minister pledging to expel illegal immigrants who have broken into the country illegally. Let's start with that bit. Broken in illegally. What does he mean?
Well, effectively, Martin, he means that France, an immigrant nation, one that has clearly been full of migration for centuries. The problem of undocumented migrants is seen as a very large one here in France, and it has been for a long time. And what we effectively have here is a new interior minister who's got the job pretty unexpectedly, I have to say. He's not a member of Emmanuel Macron's Renaissance Party, as you pointed out there, Martin. He's a Republican. This is a right-wing party, a conservative party, probably pretty similar to the British Conservatives. They're a minority party at the moment. He isn't even in the National Assembly, which is the French equivalent of the House of Commons. He's in the Senate. And Bruno Retailleau, effectively, he is laying out his stall. He's saying that this problem is still here with too many undocumented people in the country, and he is calling a meeting of around 10 prefects from the 10 regions of France, which are most affected by the problem of mass undocumented migration, and is saying that he is going to do something about it. He's using the kind of discourse that you'd expect of somebody like him. But what he's a little bit short of is specific policy. He is saying that he wants to work more closely with the European Commission, with other EU nations to sort out this problem. But we should be getting specifics at a later date. We would expect that. But at the moment, as I say, he's just laying out his stall, really. He's saying that he's going to be an interior minister who clamps down on migrants, and he is encouraging the EU to support him in that, Martin.
And that, Peter Allen, we all know is where he's going to run into trouble, because he's going to start headbutting Brussels. They're going to push back, as they did with Germany, that recently vowed to close its entire land borders with all of the nations around it. What he means is if you're coming in illegally, it means you're coming in without documents, and therefore you're going to be expelled. Well, that's precisely what many people in the United Kingdom would like us to do. But of course, that would mean us sending them back to France. So maybe downstream, if this is nipped in the bud, as it were, in France, there might be less of a through flow to our borders. And isn't it astonishing, Peter Allen, that Michel Barnier is the new Prime Minister of France, right? This guy was the godfather of Schengen, the godfather of open borders, until he got elected. And then he realised, actually, the electorate have concerns like radical Islam, the importation of huge amounts of drugs, armaments, violence against police. Finally, could we see some common sense politics in France, or do you expect massive pushback?
I think we should expect massive pushback, Martin. I think that's the honest answer. France is, of course, one of the leading lights of the EU project. It's a country that is led by a massive Europhile in Emmanuel Macron. His first loyalty in many ways is the EU, and he will be doing exactly what they tell them. We have a situation where the largest political grouping in the National Assembly is a left-wing one. They haven't produced a single minister because Emmanuel Macron's not allowing that. They're extremely angry that the most right-wing government in a long time has been chosen. Remember, it's not really functioning yet. It hasn't actually started doing much. And there's always the chance of no confidence votes as well. So this new Interior Minister, Retailleau, he has to look up to all this opposition while trying to deal with a problem that has been around not just for years and decades, but for centuries. Again, France is a massive immigrant nation, far more so than the UK, really. It's got 10 borders with other countries, very close, clearly to Africa, and has very strong links with Southeast Asia and the likes, lots of links with countries that it colonized over many, many years. So the idea that this interior minister is going to come in and try and sort all these problems out with all this massive opposition that he's going to be up against, to add to everything we've discussed so far, the European Union, the European Commission, a parliament that's not going to be on his side. You, of course, have the courts. The courts here have been very strong, as they have been in Britain, for standing up for human rights and the like, and stopping people from being deported. I've seen, while I've been in France, many attempts to deport individuals from France. It doesn't generally work. They tend to come back.
And yet, Peter Allen, he said at his first cabinet meeting on Monday, I have three priorities. The first is to restore order. The second is to restore order. And the third, you've guessed it, is to restore order. Education, education, education. This guy is talking a good fight. Is that just a political gesture to try and muzzle the likes of Le Pen, to muzzle the far right in France? Really, he's got no teeth. It's all performative.
I think rather than muzzling the ranks of people like Marine Le Pen, he wants to join the ranks of people like Marine Le Pen. And they are all very similar politicians. They talk a good game. They come out with slogans. You perhaps suggested there, that one he probably stole off Tony Blair and just changed the word. But that, he does that very well. The previous interior ministers have included people like Nicolas Sarkozy. He had all kinds of slogans as well. He used to say things like, I'm going to use a power hose to get rid of the scum. This kind of very reactionary rhetoric, which is very popular amongst those kind of politicians. There's a lot of them in France at the moment. He, as you quite rightly say, Martin, he's the first one in a while that has been in a pretty strong position. But is he going to make a huge difference? I personally don't think he will.
Fascinating. So thank you, as ever, for joining us from Paris. That's Peter Allen. Thank you. Always a pleasure.